Remember when a GIMP was the mascot for a kids' game show?
Oh my! Oh!
Let's go back.
Tamagotchi,
The Y2K.
We're going back to the 90s for this one, specifically to 1990s Canada. I'm sure I just lost half of my viewers by saying that, but I wanted to talk about something that was near and dear to my little childhood heart. For most American children at this time, they were tuning into Nickelodeon. However, the Canadian version of that was on Channel 25 with YTV. If you had basic cable growing up like I did, there were two kids channels you could watch. TVO, which was more of a channel for younger kids, and then there was YTV, which felt like the cooler, slightly older brother of the two, who smelled a little bit like weed. It was the junk food kids channel, and it reflected that in its commercials. You had ads for creepy crawlers, games like Perfection, which I'm sure is where I first developed my issues with anxiety, and tasty snacks with commercials like this.
Whoa, give me up, me mama smooth up, me mama give me up, me mama when the morning comes.
It was riddled with PSAs for children. Just watching them for the research in this video filled me with a great amount of nostalgia. You had the "What's Your Thing" ad.
My thing's sound effects. Here's a T-Rex.
This creepy drug puppet who just had loose needles and pills to give away to children. And a staple of Canadian childhood ads, the North American House Hippo, which was a PSA promoting you not to believe everything you see on television.
House hippos are very timid creatures and are rarely seen, but they will defend their territory if provoked.
I think the North American House Hippo needs to make a comeback since the internet boom. By the way, I was old enough to understand the PSA, but that didn't stop me from badly wanting a house hippo. Between airing episodes of shows like Freaky Stories, Reboot, Goosebumps, and one of my favorites, Video and Arcade Top 10, there were program jockeys nicknamed PJs that hosted a show called The Zone. They were your guide to everything the channel had to offer and became personalities in their own right. Oh, and I can't forget about the ugly talking television known as Snit. The two PJs I remember the most though are Carlos and Sugar, and like many young boys growing up I had a crush on Sugar, despite her unique voice.
I'd like to be the first to welcome you to the zone.
Thank you very much. They were worried about you.
Uh-huh.
And so on and so forth.
I remember there was a time when Sugar cut off all her hair and it was like one of the biggest events of my childhood. Now that you know a little bit about YTV, I want to talk about a particular show. A kids game show that felt like the pinnacle of what the channel represented, and that show was Uh-Oh.
What do you say when you're only one late slip away from being expelled?
What do you say when the condom breaks? What? You can't prove that wasn't a real prompt on the show. Uh-Oh is a kids game show hosted by the greatest host in television history, Mr. Wink Yahoo. He always wore the wildest suits and had the snazziest hair. I hope one day to own a suit like Wink Yahoo, but for now, it'll just remain a dream. Before we move along, I saw this clip and had to share it with everyone. It may be one of the most awkward moments from Uh-Oh.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Lauren, what is it?
What? Will you marry me?
Will I marry you? The first proposal by a contestant? Let's talk about it after the show, shall we?
Okay.
Wink handled that really well. If Fergie Oliver was the host of the show, this situation may have gone a bit differently.
Look at me a little closer. You're green. So I fooled you.
Anyway, you would never see anything weird like that on this show.
Punisher!
So this is the Punisher, and don't get me wrong, I have nothing but love for this show, but looking back at this character, you gotta wonder whose idea it was to have a GIMP as the mascot for a children's television show. I mean, Pulp Fiction was released only 3 years prior to the debut of Uh-Oh. I say it all the time in these videos, and I'll say it again, the 90s was a wild time. We don't have a lot of backstory on the Punisher, but he apparently hates children. I'll get more into his role in the show later on. The entire concept of Uh-Oh came from a sketch from a previous YTV show called It's Alive. It was sort of a kid's version of Saturday Night Live, an all that if you will, and in the cast was a very familiar face. The game was quite simple. There were 3 teams, the red, blue, and green teams made up of 2 kids each. They would compete for kids things like mountain bikes, super soakers, NFL jerseys, stereos, Bop It, and every audience member went home with Hubba Bubba gum. Each team took turns spinning this wheel. Let's take a look what it could land on. The two simplest ones are win and spin and lose and spin. If you land on those, your team would either win points or lose points and then spin again. There was the way too overpowered trade and spin, which allowed you to trade points with another team. It allowed some of the worst teams to sneak in and win the game at the end. Don't worry, I'll have an example of that coming up. The wheel could land on the dump, which is where you'd go over to a plinko/pinball type board, drop a ball, and you could end up losing or giving points to any of the teams. The final three were the most fun ones to watch. If it landed on speed round, the contestant would make their way over to Quizmaster Patricia and be asked 10 questions in 20 seconds, where you could get 5 points for each correct answer. The thing with these questions were they varied from difficult to very easy. Well, difficult for someone that age at least. You could get anything from is the sun a star to how many siblings do you have. While rewatching some old episodes, I ran into this guy, who is quite the brainiac.
Wolves come in packs, lions come in.
I don't know.
Christmas comes in.
I don't know.
Water freezes at what temperature?
I don't know.
Water boils at what temperature?
I don't know.
What's the capital of Canada?
I don't know.
How old are you?
I don't know.
God, if that was my partner on the show, I would have smacked him upside the head. He even got speed round again near the end of the show and tried to pull the same routine, and guess who won that episode? I told you I'd show you an example of how trade and win can help any team. Next on the wheel was Mayhem, where contestants were given a task to complete in a certain amount of time, refereed by Slash and Sam and Tara and Aaron. This is where you'd get messy, and generally the audience would too. If you were sitting near the Mayhem section, it was kinda like the splash zone you see at many water parks. It would usually be something gross like popping fake zits or searching through slime for coins. If you completed the task, however, you snagged your team a whopping 50 points. Last on the wheel is the titular uh-oh. This is where the Gimp, I mean the Punisher, comes into play. Your partner would be hauled away by the Punisher and put into a glass tube. If you answered the trivia question right, you got 50 points. If you answered it wrong, the Punisher got to dump his own concoction of slime on your partner. These questions were essentially a toss-up for the contestants. The questions were extremely hard for kids, so it became kind of a guessing game. In fact, there were a good amount of questions that even adults wouldn't even know. You as the audience were always rooting for them to get it wrong though, because who wouldn't want to see these kids get slime dumped on them?
What kind of plane did the infamous Red Baron pilot? Was it a Fokker triplane, a Sopwith Camel, a Ribbentrop biplane, or a Japanese Zero?
Japanese Zero?
It's a Fokker triplane. You're wrong, Jermaine.
I changed my plane oil today.
There was also Deluxe uh-oh on the board, which meant you got 2 buckets dumped on you. It was later turned into Picket, where the contestants could pick anything on the wheel, and then that was replaced later on by Fruit Gushers, which had kids bobbing for oversized fruit gushers. In the middle of the show was the On Location segment. There would be 3 teams somewhere else in Canada. It was hosted by Slime Master Sean, who they would always dress in some interesting outfits.
Oh, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Oh, I wanted that job in the North Pole so bad. On Stinky Pete. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you gotta start somewhere, right? It's like in the Joe Schmo show when they dressed Ralph up as that bumblebee. Sean would actually go on to have a pretty successful comedy career in Canada. He also played a news anchor on the long-running news satire This Hour Has 22 Minutes. In this segment, 3 teams would compete, this time the orange, purple, and yellow teams. The teams back at the studio would bet on who would win to earn points for their team, and there was some fierce competition.
I go in and no one's crossing that finish line but me!
They would run an obstacle course that was similar to the task you would do if you landed on Mayhem, and it was peak television as a kid. And that was Uh-oh, a show I'll never have the opportunity to participate in. Unless this channel grows so large that I can put on my own one-off episode of Uh-Oh. Just putting it out there into the universe. You, like me, may be wondering whatever happened to Wink Yahoo. Well, there's a bit of an update on him, and for some reason it was surprising to read at first, but the more I thought about it, it's totally suitable. As I'm sure you've guessed by now, Wink Yahoo isn't his real name. Shocking, I know. Childhood ruined. His name is Scott Yaffe, and he now does energy healing and spiritual guidance. And yes, he did keep some of the Wink suits. The Punisher, on the other hand, went on to star in Season 1 of American Horror Story. Okay, that part isn't true, but the Scott part is. If you want to know more behind the scenes information and how the show came to be, there's a good 10-minute documentary on the YouTube channel Canada's Game Shows that gets deeper into this while interviewing some members of the cast and crew. I'll leave the link in the description below. The reason I made this video was to revisit a childhood favorite of mine. I wanted to give my perspective of the show, the perspective of a Canadian kid. You may also say there were similar shows in America like Double Dare, but there will only be one uh-oh. In fact, I'm sure there will be comments mentioning Double Dare from the people who didn't watch the whole video, as seems to be a trend with my videos lately. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Welcome to all the new subscribers from my last video, and thank you for still watching to my subscribers from before. And remember, every like on this video brings us one step closer to doing our own live version of Uh-Oh. Be sure to grab your Hubba Bubba gum on the way out. Bye everyone.
I go in and no one's crossing that finish line but me!